All right, so just a few quick disclosures and trigger warnings. I have no financial disclosures to disclose. We will be talking about sensitive topics such as suicide, traumatic events, self-harm, substance use, addictive behaviors. I do curse a little bit. I don't mean any offense by it. Um, and I think there's the word ass in there at some point. It makes sense. You'll see. So Charlie and Cooper are also up for adoption at Animal Friends. So if you're interested in adopting Charlie and Cooper, head that way. Next slide. All righty. So DBT is a kind of a big program, and there's lots of moving pieces. And one of the biggest components of DBT is that we have a pretty large consultation team, and our consultation team is made up of a clinical therapist. We have a psychiatrist, Dr. Stephen Deasy. We have adolescent therapists who are also faculty, and then we have the adult DBT team that's also on that. Um, so there's several different kind of therapists that are part of that, and other moving parts that make it a comprehensive team. And so consultation team is, as Marcia Linehan kind of defined it, is basically therapy for the therapist. It not just is therapy per se, but it also helps with accountability and a cohesiveness for caring for all of our clients. And it also checks us for when we might be putting judgments on our clients, or helping us stay true to not just the DBT model, but to our clients and to each other. And it we we often call out our judgments and our feelings and how they're kind of connected, and that also helps us stay true to the DBT model. So part of the programming with DBT is, we have skills training, and then we have individual therapy. We do prefer all the therapists or all the clients to have individual therapists. Um, and not all the individual therapists are DBT trained. Ideally, they are DBT trained, but we can still work with it. It's not if they're not. So skills training is made up of 4 parts, 4 modules. It's emotion regulation, distress tolerance, mindfulness, and interpersonal effectiveness. And there is, for each skills training group, there is a co-facilitation piece of it where there's 2 therapists for every group. And the reason that this is a thing is because not only does it give us the opportunity to model appropriate relationships, and friendships, but it also gives us the opportunity to show the synthesis of 2 different perspectives while we're kind of in session. It also allows us the opportunity to help individuals if they get elevated in skills training, to kind of, separate them out and go talk to them without disrupting the flow of the actual group. And so part of our programming, it's set up very much like a class where we teach these skills and then within these modules, in order to kind of get a different lifestyle, especially as people work on their sobriety and distance from their addictive behaviors. And so it's kind of relearning how to do adult things, and how to have relationships not just with other people but with yourself, and how to kind of regulate our emotions and tolerate distress and stay connected with our environment. And a lot of times people who struggle with substance use or addictive behaviors, if they were taught it, they're lucky. A lot of times we kind of go with what we see and what we're taught, and that's not always the best way to go through life. And so the cool thing about DBT is it gives you options. And the the thing that I love about dialectical behavioral therapy is that it breaks it down real simple. So each skill that we teach builds on the skill that's previously taught. Um, there are things called diary cards as a way to kind of monitoring our emotion regulation, our coping skills, what skills we did use, what skills we didn't use, or different ways we could have done things, for a better outcome. And so the diary cards keep track of that when you're not in the skills training or when you're not in individual therapy. We do something called phone coaching, And so how our current DBT programming has it set up, most of us are able to be reached through my chart messaging and everything. So that's normally what we kind of endorse and encourage the clients to kind of use, versus phone coaching. But phone coaching is just a brief little conversation, and there's normally like a little worksheet with it. There's lots of worksheets and handouts with DBT. It's just a little brief conversation to say, okay, what skills have you tried? What skills you haven't tried? And the idea of phone coaching is you do this before you do the destructive, unhealthy, unskillful behavior. And so it's not going to help to do phone coaching if you've already done self-harm. It's not going to help you to do phone coaching if you've already taken that first drink or already walked into a casino. And so ideally phone coaching is kind of almost like calling to get a like an audible, calling to get a second opinion, a little bit more support as you make decisions towards hopefully working towards a little more skillful behavior. So with before every DBT skills group, before every client joins them, we have pre-treatment consultation sessions, and that's 2 to 4 sessions where the therapist meets with the client, and we talk about the commitment to the program, the desire for sobriety, to stop addictive behaviors. We talk about different common addictions, for DBT AT. And so with the DBT skills groups, it doesn't normally focus just on it, or it doesn't normally incorporate addiction and addictive behaviors in the programming, but our entire consultation team has been able to get additional training in order to kind of help set this up. And the team has really been super supportive of me, and my partner, who has left WVU medicine, and consequently we have gained another co-facilitator, so I'm pretty excited about that. But the commitment to this whole process is a pretty big one. So they're going to get a packet in the mail. Each client's going to get a packet in the mail, and this is obviously my hard copy, but this is all the paperwork that they receive that we're going to go through with DBT. And so when they get this in the mail, it can be pretty overwhelming. And so it takes a decent amount of commitment to kind of be a part and be accepted into this program. Each program, the way that it's currently set up now, lasts 6 months to go through all 4 modules. And it's 6 months of 2-hour group therapy. And so it does take a pretty significant commitment to join in for that. And, it's not just a change for, okay, I'm going to stop using. It's a change for, okay, I'm also going to work on changing these things in my life that aren't going so well. Everything from, I want to work on better handling, things that might come up in life, or better working on the relationship with my partner, because when I was in active addiction, I've done some things that I'm not necessarily proud of, or maybe you were in active addiction with your partner. And so figuring out what we kind of need to repair these relationships, and also, finding better relationships. A big part of DBT is burning bridges and finding new people to be friends. I always say, when you're a kid, it's way easy to make friends. You can be like, I like dinosaurs, you like dinosaurs, we're best friends now. As adults, it doesn't necessarily work like that, unfortunately. I can't just walk up to somebody in the produce section and be like, cucumbers, I love that stuff. You dip it in some ranch, they're probably gonna look at me a little weird. And honestly, if somebody did that to me, I have my headphones in all the time when I go to the grocery store, so I probably won't even hear them. And so, like, it's also like tackling that component, and especially when we're in recovery, that additional piece of community engagement and how important that is to find, peer recovery meetings, something that helps you get connections outside of the connections that you've made in the past. And so we're going to go over the list of common addictions, because that cross addiction thing is real. And so a lot of times when people stop using their substance of choice or doing the behavior of choice that kind of is unhealthy and doesn't align up with their long-term goals, the cross addiction can easily worm its way in. And so like putting that on the radar and being aware really, really helps. So with DBT, the coping skills, the lessons, they don't just stop when the session's over. They don't just stop when you leave the individual therapist's office. And so we expect people to do personal experiments or homework outside of group. And so we have that expectation that you do these things outside. And it doesn't also always have to be, oh, I use this and it's great and I got it after the first try. No, it's sometimes it's looking back on what we could have done better. And so while we recommend a 6-month commitment, we require a 6-month commitment. We recommend a full year so you can go through everything twice, because you guys are anything like I am. Sometimes I need to learn things more than once. And so that's the really, really cool part about DBT Plus. So this is all the handouts right here. This is the training manual that I use. And so I also handwrite everything just because that's the way my mind works. So there's a lot to go over. So sometimes hearing it twice helps. We make sure that we continuously use the right language and terminology, especially things when it pertains to, distress tolerance. No, we don't label emotions as bad or behaviors as bad. It's unskillful and skillful. And because that kind of also gets rid of that stigma that goes with it. And so when Marsha Linehan developed DBT in the 70s, the language has changed since then, as I'm sure you've noticed. And so some of the terminologies we've changed throughout our program development, but we've been really working on making sure that we use the terminology over and over and over again. So our clients continue to use the terminology over and over again. And that's really helpful when it kind of keeps us all on the same page. With DBT, no one's an expert. Nobody is an expert in DBT because each person has a different experience, and DBT is all about the synthesis. It's all about the and piece. So it's two things kind of coming together. It's not black or white, it's that gray piece. And so that's the really unique thing that's a little bit different than other modalities out there. We also talk a lot about judgments or, asking, is that a factual thing? Is that facts? And so a lot of times people believe that their thoughts are facts, and that's not true. A lot of times people believe their judgments are facts. Now you can feel that way, but that doesn't mean that it's factual for everybody else around us. Next slide. If you guys have any questions, like definitely put them in the chat, raise your hand, unmute, whatever you need to do. So I'm open for anything. So when people are going through pre-treatment consultation, we kind of hand them this list of common addictions because it is something that can also rear its head, not just when we're treating substance use disorders, but when we're treating addictive behaviors. We have not just people in like early recovery, we have people that's been sober for 3 years, 10 years, that realize that there's something else missing in their treatment. There's something else missing in their life. And so recognizing that there could be other things on this list of common addictions, and this isn't complete. There's so many other things like that aren't on this list. And I do believe it says the internet, but it's social. I don't think that social media is on here. Oh, social networking. So a little bit different, but so it's always kind of changing. That list of addictions always kind of changing. And so that's just kind of a really quick list to kind of help people be aware that there's other things going on. Next slide. All right, so this is a really, 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 really big part of DBT. And these are kind of the only assumptions that we really have when it comes to skill training. And I wanted to put this up there because it's a good thing to apply to everybody's life, even though it is a little bit difficult to believe. And so with DBT, there's 4 solutions to any problem. You can solve the problem, you can adjust your feelings, you can accept the problem, or you can continue in suffering and or make it worse. And so, like, looking at it that way, where there's 4 solutions to any problem, it's being mindful of which direction you want to go to that lines up with your long-term goals. And it's recognizing too that something like giving into addictive behavior or giving into our substance of choice, it is it is a solution, but it does not align with our long-term goal. And so with DBT, it's not necessarily, oh, you're required to be sober. We want people to be sober and we want people to fight like hell to stay in sobriety. But it's also realizing that the relapse isn't the best out there. And so we'll talk about that a little bit more when it comes to dialectical abstinence. We talked about chain analysis where, we talk about chain analysis where it's basically saying, like, looking at, okay, this is what happened, let's look at all the other stuff that led up to that, because it's not just the 99th domino that knocks down the 50th one. We recognize that there's all these other things and then the 50th domino falls. And so it's looking at that and kind of seeing where we might have tweaked it or reacted differently, or how we could have used a different skill or phone coaching. And so that chain analysis helps us grow and learn and utilize that unskillful behavior for the future. So we don't waste what that unskillful behavior was. We don't waste that experience because we can apply it for next time. Because we realize that there are parts and there's things in life that happen that increases our vulnerability to relapse, unskillful behavior. There's things out there that we either are aware of or not aware of. And so that's a big part of DBT. DBT also looks at environmental and biological factors. It doesn't discount those. And so it recognizes that, if you're living with a person in your life that you kind of are forced to live in, that makes the environment dangerous or unsafe, it's going to be really, really hard to get better. If you're living in an environment where somebody's in active addiction in the same house, that's an additional hurdle to getting sober. And so it looks at those environmental and biological factors where let's work and figure out a way to kind of fix that, which I love in my little social work heart. And so knowing when we have to kind of tie other pieces in or rely on other experts, or people that are more authoritative in that in a different field is really, really important. So I really want to go through some training assumptions. People are doing the best they can. People want to improve. People need to do better, try harder, and be more motivated for change. People may not have caused all our own problems, but we have to heal from them anyway. I don't like solve, because sometimes it's accepting that shitty things do happen to us. But we have to heal from them, even if we didn't ask for it. So a lot of times the reason I say heal is because when we have this addictive kind of component in our brains, even though we have it and it's shitty and it sucks, we still have to find a way to heal. We still have to find a way to work on ourselves. And so that's a big, big piece that people really sometimes struggle with. New behavior has to be learned in all relevant contexts. So that's practicing everything that you learn in skills groups, to the point where when we're kind of in a situation where sometimes everything goes out the window that we're taught, it's important to continue and practice these behaviors so it doesn't go out the window as fleeting. All behaviors, actions, thoughts, emotions are caused, and figuring out and changing the causes of behavior work better than judging and blaming. A lot of times we use judgments and blame instead of figuring out and changing the causes of behavior. And so we're asking a lot of a lot of the people that and the clients that are in our DBT addiction treatment skills training. We're asking a lot for people. And so it still blows my mind every time I get somebody that commits to a group like this. It blows my mind that recognizing that they're willing to put in the work. And I just really, really love that piece. So next slide. So one of the major modules is mindfulness. And so with DBT AT, we add clear mind, which, you know, they say addict mind and clean mind. And so we kind of modified to say someone struggling with addiction or addictive behaviors, substance use or addictive behaviors. And clean mind, it's we kind of say naive mind, because when it comes to clear mind, the addict mind is active addiction. When we say naive mind, that's, oh, I've got this, I don't need anybody, I can do this on my own. It's almost overly cocky. And so the clear mind when it comes to DBT is kind of realizing that yes, we have this, and we have to be aware of things that might put us back into active addiction, or that relapses can happen. Life happens. There's going to be things in our mind that don't just work with, you know, the average person who doesn't struggle with addictive behaviors or substance use. And so we use clear mind a lot, wise mind. That's, you know, just logic mind and emotion mind. And in the middle, it's wise mind. With mindfulness, we really want to stay connected with reality. And so Ron Swanson here has a very, very DBT quote that says, never half-ass two whole things, whole-ass one thing. And that's a big part of DBT. We recognize that we are going to multitask. We 100% are going to multitask, because that's just part of what we need to do in today's society. However, when we're dealing with very large emotions, when we're dealing with stressful situations, when we're trying to kind of relax a little bit, or we feel like we're disconnected, it's important to stay connected with reality. And so we use this idea of clear mind and wise mind to really slow down and look at the environment, look at what's really going on, and feel our emotions and know where we're feeling our emotions, because a lot of times our body will feel it way before our mind registers what emotions we're feeling. And so just taking that moment to be like, time out, where am I feeling this? Maybe I'm feeling overwhelmed, but let's check my body to see where I'm feeling this emotion. And it might be that you're also feeling angry. Or you're also feeling scared. And so checking your body to see where that is a big, big part of that. And so facts versus assumptions, I've kind of already talked about that. Judgments, a lot of times the biggest struggle with people who are working on their own sobriety is they struggle with judgments about themselves. I'm a broken person. I can never heal from this. I fucked up everything beyond repair. And so like it's that a lot of times it's that additional hurdle of judgments that you have about yourself, or even judgments that family members might have. And so how and what skills are kind of really breaking it down Barney style for mindfulness. And so that's the part where we kind of teach and observe and describe and participate. And we're supposed to break it down as small as we can. And one of the things that is referenced in the DBT skills training manual is, if we hear a bird or if we hear a chirp, we often just assume that it's a bird. But when we break down the observe and describe, we just hear a chirp. There might be some person outside my window with the phone playing bird chirping noises. Until I go outside to see if there's actually a bird outside my window, or I see it and I turn around and see it, all I really know and all I can really deserve, or all I can really observe, is I'm hearing a chirping noise. And so it's really breaks it down very, very simple. But when we break it down simply, it's really, really difficult to actually just be in the moment and find that balance. And so, like I said earlier, DBT is the synthesis of two things. Next slide. So, distress tolerance. This is where we address a lot of different things, especially when the crisis, when what the distress that we're in is related to addiction and um, addictive behaviors. And so the idea with distress tolerance is that we can survive crisis situations, accept reality, and find some freedom. Because when we are in pain and we reject reality, we stay in suffering. And so it's recognizing and building up that confidence that we can survive this distress. We can survive distressing situations. And so when it comes to dialectical abstinence, I copied that out of the book. So it's the balance between abstinence and harm reduction. And so, excuse me, when we find the synthesis of those things, we have dialectical abstinence. And for a lot of people, we know that complete abstinence, like cold turkey, never going to use again, they can stay off of it longer, but it takes them a long time to kind of get back into that sobriety routine versus harm reduction. Um, it helps people commit but they kind of relapse quicker. And so one of the things that dialectical abstinence can kind of focus on is they use it's called abstinence sampling. And so it's basically, it's hard to commit, I'm never going to do this again for the rest of my life, especially if that addictive behavior or substance is one of your earliest forms of coping skill, and what you know of it works to a certain extent. And so, like, to swear that off for something that's worked since childhood, to swear that off can be overwhelming and could feel like you're losing a best friend, and really feel that the mourning and the loss of not being able to do that again for the rest of your life. And so what we do, we talk about abstinence sampling. And so it's a matter of, okay, I want to stay sober for 90 days. I want to be, even if it's like, I want to be sober this week, or I want to be sober for today. It's very much like gaining that buy-in. And then, as we all know, it becomes a little bit easier to once we figure out our routine. So on the next page, don't flip it yet, but we talk about crisis being the addiction. And like I said earlier, it breaks it down Barney style. And that's what I really love, because each client gets a copy of everything. And so you can go back and look at your worksheets and see what you wrote down, or, see what is recommended. And so that's the really kind of cool part that I like, because there's also, it's not just a hard copy of this, but there's also PDFs online. And so I recommend a lot of people to save the PDF link on their phone, so they just have it with them if they're in a situation. And, carrying this around doesn't look very cool everywhere. So I wouldn't want to carry it around, and it's much easier to carry it around on your phone. So we're part of that. We all know that when people struggle with anything, actually, or we all have urges to do things that might be unskillful. And so adaptive denial and alternative rebellion are really, really, really good things. And so adaptive denial is a matter of, okay, I want to smoke a cigarette, but for now, I'm just going to put a Werther's Original in my mouth. Or I want to go use, but you know what? I can't. I'm not going to use today. I'm going to wait until tomorrow. And if tomorrow's still shitty, I'm going to use tomorrow. Or even like, okay, I want to kill myself. I want to commit suicide, but I want to go to the park this weekend, so I'll do it next week. And so, like, using that little bit of adaptive denial can help us really surf those urges. Same with alternative rebellion. Alternative rebellion is basically like doing something that's going against, the norms of society. So it's things like getting a tattoo, dyeing your hair, um, you know, doing something that's a little bit rebellious to kind of feed that urge in a healthier way, versus let's just give into that urge. And so adaptive rebellion or alternative rebellion can be very, very helpful. Reality acceptance is a big part of it. It kind of gives into radical acceptance, which is just like complete, this is my life, this is what it is, I'm going to be my biggest cheerleader, like we're going to be super stoked about this thing. And it's a little bit like that fake it until you make it. And so that's one of the really, really hard things to like really cheer on. But you can kind of get a little silly with it and being like, oh my god, yes, I love being 5'3". Let me tell you how much fun it is to be this flippin' short, and how much fun it is to not be able to ride a lot of roller coasters while growing up. It's the best thing ever. And so like just kind of flipping it on its head, like, and I'd argue the sillier you can get, the more fun it's going to be. So um certain the we teach a bunch of skills in this, but we teach a stop skill, a tip skill, an accept skill, and improve. All those skills are initialisms for what we can do to kind of help us in the moment. For instance, the stop skill is literally like stopping what you're doing, observing what's going on, and then proceeding mindfully. The tip skill talks about like changing your brain chemistry. It's talking about temperature. It's talking about intense exercise, and so like all those are initialisms. So to help people really, you know, connect with what's going on, and so even if you can say, okay, I know there was that skill with DBT where it talks about temperature. Luckily, this day and age, you can just go to the PDF and Control F and, you know, type in temperature, and your tip skill is going to pop up. So next slide, please. All right. So when I was talking earlier, when crisis is the actual addiction. And so that's where we kind of look down at DCBA. And so for backing down from addiction or addictive behaviors, we're looking at dialectical abstinence. Like, okay, I'm just going to be sober for the next hour. I'm going to put off gambling for the next until the next paycheck. Okay, we can work on that. So that's looking, C is clear mind and community reinforcement. That's going to a meeting. That's kind of figuring out what we need to do, or if we need to reach out to somebody. Burning bridges and building new ones. That's the thing that you do where you delete the people that you know are in active addiction, or even deleting Facebook. It's burning that bridge. And a lot of times, even with burning that bridge, the reason we're burning it, the reason that we have to burn it, is not just because that other person on the other side isn't necessarily a good fit for us, but sometimes we're not a good fit for them. And so we burn those bridges so we cannot go across them, even when we're tempted to all get out. And so we have to burn those bridges. We have to like really have those firm boundaries. And a lot of times we've never been taught how to have those boundaries, and then how to reinforce those boundaries and how to make them firm and concrete. And so sometimes we have to burn the whole flipping bridge. Alternative rebellion and adaptive denial, which we talked about a little bit before then. So also with Robin, Batman was already adopted, and so that broke my little heart. So if somebody wants to adapt a Robin, there she is.
I really wish I could, just so you know.
I would look for Batman and I was like, what? This is heartbreaking. Next slide. All right. Oh, I hit my computer. Emotion regulation. This is just not just understanding and identifying our emotions, but it's also kind of building mastery in dealing and coping with our emotions, and also like preparing ourselves for situations in the future that might trigger emotions. Are we going to a birthday party where we know that there's going to be alcohol? Are we going to see a person that we used to use with? Are we going to see somebody that might trigger these urges that we might have to really deal with? And so we want to decrease the frequency of unwanted emotions. And so we also want to decrease emotional vulnerability. So understanding and preparing for our urges. So sometimes it's a matter of we know what kind of sets us up to be vulnerable. And so we know that making sure that we get plenty of sleep and what we need to do to really hone in our sleep routine, or even what to do after we have nightmares. That's the please skill is basically like reminding us to take care of our physical health, reminding us like what we need to kind of do in order to stay healthy and exercise and eat well, and what we kind of need to do to really take care of our basic needs. So sometimes we forget that we can take care of our basic needs, especially in this society where it's very go 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 go. And sometimes it's looking at what can we do to decrease our emotional standing. So opposite action is very much like, I just want to sit here. Opposite action, I want to decrease my emotional suffering. All right, well, then I'm going to stand up. And so it's a matter of just literally doing, even it's the smallest opposite action. Well, I don't want to take a shower today. Well, I got to take a shower now. I don't want to get out of bed. Well, I've got to get to the coffee pot. And so it's making sure that we're really one foot in front of the other. And part of that is building a life worth living, which is, I think, basically what DBT kind of does. It's making sure that we're doing these things and being mindful of these things and connected to these things. And so that's part of accumulating positive events. It's doing these little positive things and doing them mindfully. So those neural pathways, and we have those good, though not good, but these healthy wanted emotions when we do the positive events that bring us joy. Next. Interpersonal effectiveness. So this is one of the more difficult ones. And so what interpersonal effectiveness, it doesn't just help us with connections with others, but it's also helping with connections with us. And so there's three main parts of interpersonal effectiveness. And those are the give skills, the dear man skills, and the fast skills. And so I drew the little thing on the bottom because fast deals with how we talk to ourselves and with ourselves and about ourselves. The give skill is more towards like maintaining relationships, and dear man is basically communicating what we need or want. And so the big takeaways from interpersonal effectiveness is getting what we want or need out of others, maintaining healthy relationships, saying yes or no mindfully, because I don't know, I have a really, really insanely hard time to say no to people. And so there's also like a list of how and you can escalate saying no, or what can help you make that decision to say no or yes. And maintaining respect, like identifying what is important to you, identifying what your values is a big interpersonal effectiveness. It's a big part of DBT too, because if we don't know what's important to us at our core, it's going to be very hard to build a life worth living and maintain that life worth living if we're just kind of passive about the things that are important to us. Build relationships and destructive ones. That ties in very much so to interpersonal, or to emotion regulation and community engagement. Walking in the middle path is really, really making sure that we stay true to our values and building confidence in ourselves, while also respecting the opinions of others. And so that's walking the middle path is something I use regularly especially when talking about things that I might feel differently about, be it politics, be it religion, be it whatever. Like walking in the middle path and understanding that people are doing the best they can and they can do better is an important part about it's an important part to not use your yardstick for somebody else, because your yardstick's just your yardstick. And so like recognizing that other people have their own yardstick, and it's even helpful when you realize that somebody else is using their yardstick on you, and that doesn't feel good. It's like, wait a minute, what the hell? Like, get your yardstick away from me. I got my own. And so like walking the middle path's a big part of that. So next slide. Okay, so with research and effectiveness, this DBT for substance use disorders and addictive behaviors has not really been researched as much as I wish it has. There is a group with there's a university in Italy. I think it's in Firenze. I don't know. My Italian has failed me, even though I took 2 years in college. Um, so there is a university out there and a great team that is doing all this research on substance use disorder. And we've had contact with them to kind of establish our own. However, there is this language barrier. And so they've developed a whole list of how to kind of rate impulsivity and how to kind of rate your emotional distress before and after you go through the program. And so we're working on incorporating that a little bit more so we can do more research, but there are several studies right now that are going on, but most of this stuff has been done within the last few years. And so the effectiveness of it is very early stages. And so we know that it's effective because it just makes sense, but it's a matter of like actually being able to replicate it. Not just because it takes a lot of time to get trained to be DBT, and it takes a lot to build a skills program. It takes a lot of moving pieces. And so being trained up and having an established DBT program and having consultation group. There's a lot of moving pieces when it comes into DBT and substance use in addictive behaviors. And so there is a little bit more research when it comes to borderline personality disorder and mainly alcohol use disorder. But there's still so much more to learn out there. And so there is also research in Egypt, I want to say, that's been promising. But again, these groups are pretty small, and also, the language barrier thing. It makes us realize that, we need to do this more. This needs to be replicated a lot. And, as our language kind of changes too, how we talk about this is very different. And so we know through meta-analysis and systematic reviews, we know that it can be beneficial. I've experienced and had clients report how beneficial it is. I've had their individual therapists come up and like, holy crap, I can start doing the work now. Holy crap, like they're talking about staying mindful. They're saying like that they're tolerating their distress better. Like, so we know that it works. So some of the some of the more recent studies that have been going on show that there is an increased abstinence with DBT programming. We noticed that there's decreased levels of impulsivity versus like just stopping the substance use, but there's no difference in when comparing to the healthy controls. So there's no difference when we compare somebody who has no issue with addiction or addictive behaviors. It shows that there's lower severities of substance use disorder, decreased difficulties in emotional regulation. They have a lower likelihood of addictive behaviors. With the borderline personality disorder and a substance use disorder study, they did a year study with people who did I want to say it was training for a whole year. I have it's in my resources. So they compared DBT skills group with treatment as usual. So whatever that treatment might have been for that person. And so they noticed that there was significant improvement over treatment as usual, and that the improvements maintained themselves for at least 4 months after that year. And so I think they just stopped following them after that 4-month period. And we know that more people dropped out of the treatment as usual versus DBT. And I think it makes sense because there's pre-treatment commitments. You're going to commit for 6 months. And so I'd argue that there's more buy-in. There's more pieces. We vet people a little bit more, I'm going to say critically. And so there could be so many different factors beyond this just works. I like to believe that it just works, but I also have to recognize the limitations that might be influencing studies like this. But we're still in our early stages of researching this stuff and learning about it. And luckily, we do have some wonderful faculty members that have been more than willing to have their students look into this stuff and everything. But again, it's still a lot of moving pieces to kind of get it on board. So, and I think that's it. I think the next slide's just my resources. Yep. So again, this is a program that Marsha Linehan developed forever ago. And, you know, the first, 3 there, that Caviccioli, they're part of the team in Italy that